crazy. We are live. We are live. We are live. I don't know what's happening with our technology today. But we're live. Stephanie is there. She has her smiling face on. I don't know why the camera insists on not moving. But you will hear her voice today and may not see her beautiful face go away, come back, and all of that. But she's here. We are going to be discussing grief. Are you moving around, Steph?
I am. You think I'm just standing still like that? Like I'm good.
Well, so
Can
on
you see me breathing? Ha, ha.
no, on the live, you turn to the side. Okay, so
Oh,
you're moving on the live, okay?
okay. So,
I see, yes, I see all of that. You're breathing all of that. So you're moving on the live, okay?
okay.
So it
Okay.
will not be a problem for the people out there because they'll be able to see you. I just won't be able to see you moving around, but I know you there,
I'm
right?
here,
Yes. So
front
it's
and
just on my
center.
yeah, it's
I'm
just on my screen. Yeah.
okay.
So cool. So on the live, we are straight. I don't know what's happening on this platform.
And I can't
Um,
share again. So just so we are
and so
clear.
we'll just share and I can't start a watch party. So that's cool. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about stages of grief and how to survive grief, how to process through grief. So I am Michelle. Welcome, first of all, to Heads Up Mental Clarity. Please share, share, share. Come in the room. We are a few minutes late getting started because we had technical difficulties. You guys know how we do. We have technical difficulties. That's what happened. And but we are
It's
we
almost intentional. We did that on purpose.
we are here now. We are going to have a live. Let me tell you something. We're gonna have a live if both our screens are blank and you
That's,
can hear the voices.
that's
We're gonna
right.
have a live. We're gonna get this information over to the people. So if you are on here, please do a watch party. Please share. If you're on YouTube, please like, comment, and all that stuff in the YouTube and share with people. Subscribe to us and all of that great stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about grief, stages of grief, how to process through grief, and the difference in regular grief and complicated grief. So that's what we're going to be doing. I am Michelle, your mental health therapist, and this is my co-host.
Stephanie Kane.
Yeah. So
Sorry, girl. I do that every week. I
what's
gotta
that?
wait. I miss my cue.
Oh no, you good. Mm-mm, you're good. Um, So today, even though they can see us out there, we can't really see each other, how we're moving or whatever. I don't know
Right.
me. So this gonna be a phone conversation. How about that?
That's probably even better. We'll see.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Joy. Joy say, I see y'all. Thank you, Joy. Thank you for chiming in. We appreciate it. We really
Joy.
appreciate it. Joy said, I can see you all. Good. I'm glad you can see us, Joy. Um, okay. And I'm using my iPad to be able to kind of see people's responses because I can't always see their responses. So we got Joy in there. We got Barbara. We got Jasmine. Thank you guys for chiming in with us. Please share, like, repost, all that great stuff. Thank you for the hearts and the love. Okay, so Stephanie, let's get started. We're going to talk about stages of grief. Go ahead and let us know what you have, and then I'll just kind of chime in there as you know, as we get this conversation going.
Well, most people know grief as, the response to loss, loss of someone living or deceased, and even a loss. Well, we'll probably go into that, but loss of any kind, the brain registers as grief. So if you lose a football, you lose a wedding ring, the stages of grief go into effect immediately. One of the 5 stages of grief you will experience. So grief is an expression of immense love, the loss of immense love or a value, that the love or value that you have for another person. So the intensity of the grief a lot of times is allowable because it is an expression of how much love you have for something or someone.
Yeah.
Um, And so want to normalize grief. Um, it always has some type of emotional response.
Mhm.
Um, and anger. It affects our brain cognitively. It affects our social and cultural and spiritual experiences, and it changes those dynamics. Grief changes all those dynamics of in our journey. So, one of the technical definitions is that grief is a response to loss, particularly the loss of someone or something, some living thing that has died, to which we have a bond or an affection that has been formed for it. Along with grief being an emotional response to loss, loss can also change the trajectory of your life. And that's the part that I want to talk about later.
Yes, yes. Okay, and so before we get to that, and Stephanie just talk about different types of grief. So grief, it can be the loss of anything, like she said, of death, a breakup, even ending a friendship, losing a job. So all those things you're parting with, especially if you have um, some emotional attachment to those things, you will suffer. You will start to go through the stages of grief. They say that there's 5 stages of grief. And let's talk a little bit about denial. So one of the stages of grief is denial. And that is that when something happens, everything in you just can't believe it happened. So you're in denial. And what that denial might look like is, if you're used to getting a phone call, the brain registers that you're going to get that phone call the same time you get it every day. Right. And so that's one of the things that, and so Steph, from your standpoint, you have an example of denial.
Yeah, so I have a client right now that is dealing with some severe, a great loss. And one of the things that she says that she tells herself is that they're out of town.
Mm, yes.
They're out of town. So that's why there's no communication, and that's why they're not talking, and that's why they're not
Mhm.
available, is because their loved one is out of town.
Yes. And yes, absolutely. And that in the state of mind that she's in, we're going to talk about a little bit later about complicated or complex grief, can lead to that type of grief. Um, so denial is one of the steps of it. Anger is another. And let me just say this: there is no there's not necessarily an order. Like, you can experience either of these at any time, right? In order, out of order, there is no real order to the stages of grief. Okay. So the next one is anger. So one of the things, and I wrote down examples, so you guys see me looking at my example. So it's an example is, if she cared for herself more, this wouldn't have happened. So you tend to get angry with whatever the situation was that caused the death, or even the person that, maybe if they were ill, you are angry with them. Even if they weren't, sometimes you can be angry that they left because you feel like they left you. And so those are my examples of anger when it comes to grief. Um, Angry, and I have real life examples, but I'll pass on those right now. Go ahead, Steph, for anger. Hi, Anita. Hey, Judy.
Um, well, pretty much, yeah. Anger, I don't know. I think anger kind of speaks for itself. The
Yeah.
blaming and the shaming and the um, woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Hmm.
Um,
Angry
and
with yourself sometimes.
mhm,
If
mhm,
you're a parent that loses a child, I can see, being angry with yourself, thinking you could have done something different. Then there's the stage of bargaining. If only I had done, like Stephanie said, if you shoulda, coulda, woulda. I should have done this. I should have called. I should have gotten them to the hospital sooner. I should have, all the things that you think you should have done. If only I had called her one more time. If I
mhm,
could have one more day. If I could have this, I'll do that. It's kind
mhm,
of bargaining. Um,
mhm.
yeah. Go ahead, Steph.
Now, I don't really have an example for bargaining, and I would have used this exact same. Um, well, you know what? That's not true. So let me just take it away from grief and into relationships. That's what I
Okay.
gotta do, right?
Yes. Yes.
so, so, uh, there's the time where the bargaining comes in when it is obvious and evident that a connection needs to be severed, and a person then
Mhm.
begins to say, like, tell me what I could do, what should I have done, or in the breakup a
Yes.
person is feeling like, well, maybe I should have capitulated, or maybe I should have
Mhm.
availed myself even though I didn't want to, whatever.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that, so it can happen even in that, or even
I
the
can do things different
mhm,
if we could just make this work.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
I promise I'll be different, and I
Mhm.
promise that this won't happen again. And because it's the fear of the loss, it
Yes.
is the loss is what is impacting the behavior.
Yes, yes, and so you go through all of those bargaining, situations, and then there's, depression, where you slip into a depression where you're sad, I don't know how or, um, how to get through this, or I don't want to go on without this person. And this can be in anything. I don't want to go on without this relationship if the person is still alive, or if somebody passed on, I don't want to go on without this person. And so there's a part of you goes into a depressed state,
Mhm.
right? It's natural, it's normal, and we'll get to like forgiving yourself and moving forward and processing through. We'll get to that part. We talk a lot about depression, so if you've been on here before, you know what that looks like, because we've talked about that. So depression is one. You Steph, just chime in if you want to on either of these as we go. And one is this acceptance. Another one is acceptance. Like you don't want to
Mhm.
accept the person being gone. I am so fortunate to have had you accept what's happening. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
so fortunate to have had this person in my life, right? Um, and I cherish the memories that I had with this person, right?
Right.
Start to maybe honor the person in a certain way. You start to talk a little bit more about the good times with that person. Now you're in acceptance that even though the person is no longer here with you, you have those memories and things to hold on to. You accept. You're starting to heal at this time. You're starting to go through a healing process. Um, you want to add to that stuff?
No, I just want to reiterate that those steps are not linear. So they don't just go through this and then there's no check off boxes. They come back
Mhm.
around. It's super, super cyclical. Like it's just gonna, as you go through whatever grieving process for whatever situation that you're grieving in, it goes around and around. One day you could be angry, one day you could be bargaining, next day you could be in denial. You could be in acceptance,
Mhm.
bargaining, and the depression piece that comes in and out. The
Yeah.
depression piece, the depression piece um in my imagination is just woven throughout the entire tapestry
Yes.
of grief.
Mhm.
And you just be mindful and be aware that it's there, because well, to me it makes sense because all you have now of the lost item is the past, and depression is ruminating on the past. It's
Right.
not being anxious about tomorrow yet, so it's ruminating on the
Mhm.
past. So it makes so much sense as I review
Yeah.
the steps. It just it's woven through there, which kind of validates what we had talked about. Depression is it's a normal process. Depression is a thing that happens. It doesn't mean that you're clinically, something's clinically, you need a clinical diagnosis for it. It's a thing that happens to the body. If I hit my
Right.
elbow, it's gonna hurt, I'm gonna grab it. And so
Yes.
depression is a natural process of the grieving process.
Yeah. Hi, Wanda. Hi, Mom. Hi, Denise. Thank you guys for chiming in. Yes. And then there's two others
Hey,
that
Denise. I just oh my
yeah,
goodness.
Denise Quinn. Yep. And then there's two others that's been kind of added in, and that's guilt, feeling bad about something that you didn't do, or I should, if I could have picked up the phone, or if I could have sat there a little bit longer. So the guilt, have regrets about things, um, said or done, you know, um,
Yes. Yeah.
and wish you could turn back the hands of time so you can correct
Yeah.
something, or you can do something a little bit different. So
Yeah.
you have that guilt that is kind of woven in there. And then, and again, It's no particular order. But what I do want to say is that when you finally start to really process through it, and you will still feel these different stages, but when you start to heal, though, it's not as intense, and that's when like the acceptance and the hope kind of kicks in, and it's kind of like balanced out, the acceptance and the hope that life can and will still go on, and this is how I will cherish this person, um
Hmm.
you know
And that also, no, just to, did you just go away? So that's also to speak to the importance of family and not being isolated during a time of grief. I'm trying to see if my friend is going to come back.
I am gonna
Okay.
come back and kick me out.
Okay.
um Thank you for staying in there. I guess I'm gonna come back on. Yeah, there I am on the live. Sorry about that, guys. I got kicked out. I don't know why I got kicked out, but I did. This platform is acting real particular today. But go ahead, Steph. You were saying
What was I saying? Um,
talk about acceptance and hope.
I totally forgot after you came back in, so I apologize. I dropped it.
Oh,
My thought went out the
you're just
window.
talking about, like you accept what has happened, and then life will go on, and you start to build life and honor the person and the memories. Um,
Okay, I know where I was. I was going to say the importance of not isolating and why it's important to have family gatherings or have family with you. And even though I know that that has been a big challenge during this pandemic, when I've had family members to pass away during this pandemic, and it has been one of those situations where I can just tell the difference. I can tell the difference in the healing because, in the past we come and we serve and we help the grieving family, and we're there to lend words of encouragement throughout the day. And that person can walk around their house or wherever they are and hear other people and family members sharing their amazing experiences about
yes,
the person they've lost. And a lot of that element is missing. I mean, some people may have had it. I'm just talking about my own experience. Was missing, and I think that is a part of the healing process, because where I
mhm,
can't find hope or acknowledgement or acceptance in the
yeah,
moment, it there is a comfort in that other people have an experience of a person that I don't have the courage just yet to talk about because the pain of the loss is too intense.
right.
And so I understand on a whole nother level now why it's
Mhm.
important not isolate and to have your family members or friends there, and why the repast is important, and why the tradition of coming to the houses and things like that. It makes complete sense to me.
I'm going to go to the comments really quickly because they're rolling in here. I appreciate you guys. Anita Wade Johnson says, I've experienced them all since my mom passed on April 1st, but recently went through the depression stage again. Yes. So these stages will kick in. I remember my nephew died and we moved to Atlanta, and I was going on about my day coming from work, and I was just doing really well. And all of a sudden, just grief hit me, and I didn't understand what was happening, why, where is this coming from? Like, I wasn't even thinking about that, but I was driving past a cemetery and didn't even realize it. So I had to
Mm,
pull over and get my stuff together. So yes, different triggers will come up for you in these different stages that will affect you in different ways. Joy says today was one of those days because I lost my god sister in January 2020. April 2020, lost my mother, and June 2020, my older sister. And all three were my go-to people. So this subject was on point today. I think I only have acceptance because I don't have time for anything else. That makes sense.
mm.
Hmm.
Wow, Joy.
Yeah. And we hear
So
you.
it's interesting that you say that, because I'm just going to tell you, if you don't take time for anything else, it's going to take time for you.
Yes, it will
Um,
manifest.
it's going to manifest. So you got to turn towards it, and it's hard, and go to therapy, get some friends or whatever, but you got to turn towards it. You can turn
Yeah.
towards it by yourself too. But you got to turn towards it, even if it's just a little bit of
Yes.
of turning towards it. Like, you know, my favorite word is ouch,
Right.
and a couple of cuss words after that, you know, because it
Yes.
hurts. This
Sit
hurts.
in it for a second. You don't have to
Yeah.
stay there. You don't have
Yeah.
to stay there. But ignoring it, pressing it down, I promise you, the body keeps score.
Hmm.
Even if you're like, I don't have time for this, I got to keep it moving. Steph and I, we always have this little running joke about not having time for stuff. And it's like, look, I got to schedule a breakdown. I don't have time for a breakdown. But let me tell you something. If you don't, your body will.
Hmm.
If you don't do it, your body will do it for you, and you want to make sure that you are doing the things that you need to do for yourself. So when you're sitting in that motion, and we're not going to leave you without some coping strategies and some ways to handle it,
Right.
we would do that.
Right.
Joy said okay with tears and lots of explanation points. Yes, Joy, please deal with it, because we don't want you don't want to have we have stress in our body sometimes that we don't even realize is there. So
Hmm.
things start to go awry in our bodies and we don't understand what's happening. Well, you got to face that grief. We can't like ignore when we have emotions. Um, Girl, you know we good. We can talk. We the two of us we can talk, but you want to process through that grief and don't ignore that it's happening. And you have had a lot to happen in 1 year, so I understand that. Wanda said grief is like a wave, and when it comes to you, when it comes, you have to sit in it. Otherwise, it will be harder the next time it comes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Wanda's
Yeah.
has gone through some grief. Is probably I'm sure still experiencing it. So yes.
Yeah.
Um, Also, we'll drop tips and tidbits. Joy laughed at Stephanie and the cuss words. Also, we will, we'll drop tips in the group, the Heads Up Mental Clarity group on grief. So please make sure you stop by there. But yes, please handle the grief. Please allow yourself to sit in it. You don't have to stay in it, but allow yourself to experience those emotions, because that's how we process through the grief. Okay.
And just so I know people use the language by sitting in it, and meaning to just be aware, like saying like, oh, like that bothered me.
Hmm.
That, and you can just give it to the grief, because if that's the biggest thing in your life, and based on the list you have, that was the biggest thing in your life, you can account, you can like actually by default say, this must be grief because this is out of character for me, and then keep it moving. If it's too hard to press in there, but just even the acknowledgement of it, if
Yes.
you wake up irritated, blame everything on the grief, and then just do grief work by acknowledging it, and working through it. Like, I feel that doesn't feel good, and then the times when it
Mhm.
does feel good, oh, I feel this, I'm living in the space of acceptance right now, this feels amazing. Like, start to acknowledge all the different nuances in your life, because on top of
Yeah.
COVID, this is my imagination for you, on top of COVID and all of that loss, you will, if you don't acknowledge it, you will have what we call compound complex grief, because that's a
Yes.
lot all at once. It's like being in a boxing ring, like hook uppercut, like it's just like coming at you. So um yeah, just even if you just be aware of it, that's all. Just be
Yeah.
aware. Like, I'm ignoring you right now, depression, ain't nobody got time for this. Like,
Yes.
even just saying that, it's just an acknowledgement.
Mhm.
And
And
thank
let
you for sharing
and
that.
I want Yes, and Joy, I do want to acknowledge too that all of these things happened during the pandemic. So she said, yes, Stephanie, no hugs, no family, on top of being terrified of COVID. So all of these things. And with Joy has two young adult daughters. So I'm sure we try to manage other people and how they're doing, and Joy is the strong one, and I know that because I know her. And then trying to make sure you're okay for everyone else. You got to take out time.
Hmm. I think Michelle just froze. Or did we both freeze?
got to cry in the shower. You got to have for as when Wanda
You you clipped out, so I hope you're still going on Facebook. Were we still moving on Facebook?
okay,
Were we
it's
still at
coming
it
back
on
in.
Facebook?
I think we're back in. Yeah, we're back in.
Were we were we
I don't know
frozen
what
on
happened.
Facebook?
Just for a second, yeah. You weren't, I was.
Oh, okay.
It
All
seemed like you
right.
were, yes, like we both froze, and then I could see you because there's words going on the screen saying you dropped out. So
Oh.
yeah. So I was just reading what Wanda said. Wanda said, I tried to run from it by traveling, but it followed me regardless. So yes, you have to feel it, breathe through it because you feel it, because you feel it in your body. So you have to
Mhm,
feel it and breathe through it because you feel it in your body.
mhm.
And her thing was traveling. And you went to some fabulous places, by the way, Wanda. I live vicariously through you in your travels. But that was one of the ways that she was trying to run from it by traveling. But it's there. When you get back, it's still there.
Right,
When you get back, it's still there.
right. And
Yeah.
I want to just say that, so the one of the questions I wrote down is, how should I grieve? Should I grieve
Mhm.
privately? Should I grieve publicly? Should I, is it based on my personality type? And there is no way to grieve. So if you want to grieve privately, that is your divine right. And if
Mhm.
you want to, like, scream it out to the world that I'm in pain, or whatever you need to do, that is your divine right as well. And
Yes.
yes, there are certain personalities that are very introverted, or that handles pain or hurtful things within themselves. The one
Mhm.
thing I do want to say is that you just got to handle it.
Yes.
You got to handle it. And I don't mean like wrestle it down to the ground. I mean like handle it, hold your heart, and let your heart break if it needs to break. Let your heart
Yes.
rejoice if it needs to
Yes.
rejoice, and allow yourself to have whatever emotional nuances that show up. I know that if you haven't experienced grief, one of the things about it is that it shows up anywhere. You could be in a
Yeah.
board meeting. Oh
Mhm.
my God, I so remember that. You
And
just
that's what I mean when I say, the body keeps score. It just happens.
mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
remember that grief is an expression of immense love or value
Yes.
for
Yeah.
something. So
Mhm.
why not experience it? Because it's an expression of love. It's my
Mhm.
heartfelt love for whatever it was. And even if it was well, we'll talk about that in complex grief, but it's an expression of your love for that person.
Mhm.
Um Someone asked, how do I deal with this breakup? How am I supposed to feel? I'm like, feel it. Feel
Yes.
it. If you really loved this person, just because the situation didn't go in the way you wanted, the outcome didn't happen the way you wanted it. But if you love that person, why not still love them? Just stand in that space of love. You don't need them to cooperate with you. You can just choose to love them,
Mhm.
and let that experience be your grieving process.
Yeah.
When the depression comes up, when the woulda coulda shoulda, I love them, like I love them. I love them. I miss them.
Mhm.
It's okay to have that experience, because what you're feeling or trying not to feel, which I think is interesting, because I some anyway, um is that you're trying not to feel the love you have for the person.
Mhm. I
You're
know
trying to
one
avoid not,
Go ahead.
no, that was all.
Okay. I know that one thing that something I know that, we go into and I don't know about every single person, but I know everyone that I know go into a mode of needing to do something, right? To kind of like honor, to to feel the connection and an attachment of the person still being there. And they find a cause, and it's okay, right? Don't let it replace the guilt, the grief. Don't let it be the thing that you're focused on just so you can stay away from the grief. But it's okay to have to honor the person, to have some type of way. I think we talked about this once before. I know my mom and her siblings, the month of my grandmother's birthday, they all get together and they
Mm-hmm.
just kind of remember her and the things that she said and things like that. So you just, sometimes people will do that as well as to have something, and create new memories, something to hold on to. Um, uh, Joy said yes, especially being the strong person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Strong people are not always okay. And we have to recognize that, and we have to let people know that. But I want to get into, we're going to get into complicated grief. But before we get into complicated grief, I want to kind of let you know too that you get to grieve for how and for as long as you grieve, right? But we'll get into complicated grief because that's a more intense grief. When I say however long it takes you or that you need to, I don't mean like being in an intense grief forever or indefinitely. What I do mean is that sometimes people might think that you should be over it, you should be past it, and other people don't get to tell you how to grieve and when to grieve. That's what I mean. You don't need to compare yourself to someone else who may seemingly be healing and processing and moving on, and you feel like you're still grieving this person. You don't need to compare yourself to someone else. Your grief is individual. Grief is individual and it looks different for everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
be in your grief, deal with your grief, and not trying to compare yourself with someone else. And before, if we have time before this is over, I want to kind of give you tips on like how to treat you in the grief, but also what to do if somebody else is grieving. Because a lot of times we do and say the wrong thing to people who are grieving. We mean well, but sometimes we don't say the right things to people, and it can make them potentially make them feel worse. So I'm gonna let you go ahead, Steph. If you want to add to that, or you want to jump right into the complicated grief.
I agree definitely with grief. Talk about relationship wise. I think that people don't understand when people when there is a divorce or a separation or a
Mhm.
breakup, it's the same level of grief. The loss is the loss, and a lot of times people will encourage people to go and get another relationship really quick, or be like, you're not dating yet. And That's the same type of conversation with someone who chooses to process their loss as well.
Mhm.
It's the same. Um, they are having the exact same experience
Yeah,
as
and
someone
it could,
who experienced a
and
death.
your continued grieving could really cause some anxiety for them. But that's on them. And that's their anxiety, and they have to deal with that. It's, if you, and these people really care about you too. If you're okay, then I'll be okay. So I'm trying to say things for you to be okay. Um, well, come on, let's move on. Or, you've heard people, I've heard people say like, oh, you could have another child, or you can get another,
Mm,
or you guys gonna try for more, or are you gonna get married again, or whatever. And it really is, they really want you to be okay, and they think that that's the solution. And if you are the people I'm talking about, don't do that. Just allow the person to grieve. Just allow them to grieve where they are. Step back and think about why you feel like they need to do a thing. Because I promise you, you'll find that it has more to do with you than it does for the person that you're telling that to.
mhm,
Okay. The
mhm.
anxiety of you wanting to see them feel and be better. And maybe this can help. And so please be mindful of that. Okay, we're gonna go to get into complicated grief, and is also called persistent complex bereavement disorder. Y'all know we got a disorder for everything, right? Okay, Steph, I'm
I
gonna
didn't
let you
even
go
look that up.
with
I just
that.
so one of the some of the deep depression, extreme isolation, and hopelessness.
Mhm.
And it can
Mhm.
happen. It doesn't, so it's not duration. It's not like that person been grieving for 3 years. That person must be in complex. No,
No.
that's not what that means. That means that a person that can go immediately into into complex grief,
Complex.
depending
Yes.
on how they're able to hold that level of truth or that
Mhm.
experience that they're having in their lives. So complex grief consists of that deep depression, extreme isolation, and hopelessness. Um,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
when people say, I can't come back from this."
Yep.
That's
Unable
like,
to recover.
wow, yeah,
Mhm.
I cannot come back from this, and it's
Mhm.
just, and then they stay in that reality. It's not just a statement, but after a while, you look up, and that person they mean that thing.
Mhm.
Suicide ideation. Say that
Yes.
again.
I was gonna say it's a room that is never touched, and everybody's forbidden to be in that space. It's it's intense. They're not able to recover or resume their own life. Extreme focus on that person, and then yeah, going into the suicidal ideation.
Suicide ideation and suicide attempts, of course.
Hmm.
Reckless behavior,
Hmm.
self-harming. Those are the signs of very complex and complicated grief. When grief becomes an attack, self-blaming thoughts, loss of self-blaming thoughts. Let me just not gonna run past my notes. So when grief becomes an attack, where we are now attacking the person who, let's just talk about death, the person who died, and then also attacking me, um, feeling, having blame thoughts, if only, to the point where you just shut down, or
Yes.
you push people away, or you discard people because you literally believe with your whole heart that this is the reason for, and we just have
Hmm.
extreme attack.
Hmm.
I dealt with a murder in my family of someone extremely close to me, and that could have easily been a decision to be made, to blame and attack his family and attack, but you but it happens where people are just hell bent. Soldiers even have this experience coming from combat. They can just, well, anyway, soldiers can have the same thing where they are like attacking themselves constantly, or if one of their people got killed, like, just say if they, I don't know, whatever, but soldiers have a tendency to be this way too, and a lot of people, but it's extreme when it's just constant. You cannot release the blame game. You cannot shake blaming
Yes.
yourself or
Yes.
someone else. You just cannot resolve that. Like, there is nothing that you can say to me that's going to make me believe that it wasn't my fault.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
almost like the mind just has clicked off any other option. um and then um
And going on a
with
vigilante move to, in your case, and I've dealt with a death and murder too, where you have made up your mind that you're gonna figure out, if you don't know who did it, or you know who did it, you're gonna figure out how. You spend your whole life figuring out how to make this person pay
mhm,
for.
mhm,
Um, and so then you're not living.
mhm,
You are no longer living,
mhm.
right? You're existing in this complicated, complex grief.
Right. One of the things that came to me is that the loss, in complicated grief, love has gone out the door, and now
Yeah.
we are operating in fear.
Yes.
So now, where I said before that grief is an enormous, the pain of an enormous sense of loss for someone that I love. I love them, and that's why my grief is at the level it is, because of how much I love them. But then once it becomes complicated, now
Mhm.
love is out the window, and then fear, now the fear energy and the fear activity now takes over,
Mhm.
and now become has dominion over your thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the and I have here on, and so what to do, you ask. What do I do? How do I get through this? How do I deal and process this? right? There's no get over, some language that we should not be using, and that's one of them. We get over, but how do I process through this, right? What to do? I have some things listed here, Steph. One of the things I thought about, I'm a journal queen. I'm always talking about journaling how you feel, journaling what you miss, journaling what you love. Um, it's just a plethora of journal prompts that you can journal for grief, right? Journaling how you feel. If I were your therapist, I would have you journaling like those thoughts and those triggers and things like that that come up for you, those emotions, so that we can process them together in therapy. So, grief journal is one of the things that I thought about. Experience the emotions. We talked about that. Acknowledge how you feel. It's
Absolutely.
okay. Accept how you feel. You're not weird. You're not like, accept how you feel. It is what it is. You feel what you feel, and you not accepting it doesn't mean you don't feel that way. And know that your feelings are valid.
They
Your
are.
feelings are valid. Um, your feelings are valid. Now, if you're at the stage of in complicated grief, and let's just say you're at the stage of anger, and that becomes destructive, then in any part of the complicated grief, though, any symptom of that, definitely you want to get some professional assistance to help you to kind of process through that. But experience your emotions. Like
And
Juan said, deal with them, feel them, breathe through it. Yeah. Go
and
ahead.
your feelings are your feelings. They're not
Yes.
feelings your partner should be having, or your parents should be having, or your siblings should be having. They are exclusively yours. They're
Yeah.
yours. And
Yeah.
nobody is responsible for managing them. They're
Mhm.
your feelings.
Right.
It's your experience. Mhm.
With that said, be kind to yourself, right? So be
Absolutely.
patient with yourself, because just like other people could say, like, you're still grieving or you're not over that yet. Sometimes we tell ourselves that I should be at a different space. I should be doing something different. Why do I keep thinking about this? What am I crying for now? Be kind to yourself. Be patient with yourself through this grief process, right?
Can I
Um,
add something to that?
yeah, absolutely.
So the benefit or the reality of why it's super crucial to be patient with yourself is because on our journey, on my 50-year journey, the reality is that I've had a lot of griefs that I've never addressed. I've
Mhm.
never acknowledged. I've never given any thought to. So I think. And so then when one grief experience shows up and it feels so overwhelming in
Yes.
your mind and in your heart space and locked in those muscles of your body, specifically your hip area of your body, all of that information is stored. So
Mhm.
when it keeps coming up, it's because all of it wants to come up. This is just a catalyst. And when we use language like everything is working together for my highest good, it's not this moment. It's like this moment is the catalyst to all the other things that I didn't address once before. It's all of it is working together. And
Right.
so knowing that, it's like, why am I still having this? Why I love, what when that happens, understand that we have had experience of grief that we weren't even allowed to have grief for. Oh girl, get over it. Oh girl, wipe
Right.
your face. What you
Yes.
crying for? You ain't got nothing. There ain't nothing to be crying about. So understand that there's been so much shutdown that when it does come, it's scary a little bit. But be
Yeah.
patient with yourself and just let it come, let it flow.
Yeah. And I just had a thought about, even in relationships that you choose to end because they're not healthy or whatever, there is still a grieving process to that too. And
Mm-hmm.
just because you ended it, someone else might feel like, well, I mean, like, that's over. You need to get over it. No, it's still a grieving process to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a grieving process to that. So we got to be patient. Be patient with yourself. If there's anything that you hold shame or responsibility for, forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Forgive yourself. Because know that whatever the situation is, you are ultimately not in control,
Right.
and you
You're
can
not.
control the loss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Um, and then with that, doing some self-care. Now, if you're in my Facebook group, Heads Up Mental Clarity, last month we did gratitude journaling, a 30-day challenge for gratitude. This month, starting yesterday, we're doing the mindfulness meditation 30-day challenge. Please go over to the page, especially if you are dealing with stressors, grief, and things like that, and follow
Yes.
through with the challenge. I made it really simple. I'm really simple. Getting up out the bed and breathing for a minute. I made it very simple. Stretch. And I brought that up because we're going into self-care, making sure that you're taking care of yourself and what that looks like to you. The first thing is to have, just like in this pandemic, having a routine so you can have some sense of normalcy, something that you can have control over, because you couldn't control the loss that you suffered,
Right.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
something you can have control over. So make sure you're sticking to a routine. Um, and in that routine, incorporate some meditation, some yoga, exercise, proper
Mm-hmm.
rest, relaxation. Allow that. Everything is going to take care of the body, because when the body is out of whack physically, um, it weighs more on the body with the grief. So you need to be taking care of yourself, and in all costs, we should be doing that anyway. So you need to be taking care of yourself. You choose. Exercise doesn't have to look like a 2 hour exercise routine or hit with, no, it could be a 15-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute. But, especially if you're not exercising now, any movement you do
Right.
is going to be some exercise for you. So doing some
Grief
self-care.
or no grief. Grief or no grief.
Right.
We need to
Right.
move this body. Like, please, it would be. We would be remiss without this public service statement. So,
Yes.
what is it? Public safety announcement.
Right.
Move that body. Move
Yes.
it. I don't. 15 minutes, 10 minutes. Get your favorite song out and dance. Like,
I
just dance hard.
Yes. Let me just tell you, I just came across a video of Tabata, and I had never looked at it or whatever. There was a 30-minute, and it was like, looked like the easiest thing ever. It was hip hop Tabata. So you got a few little dance moves in there. But they have 4-minute ones, they had 30-minute ones. So do whatever is going to be conducive to your schedule, but do something. It's going to make you feel better
Oh my soul.
always. And
Yeah.
God is just so awesome how all these things kind of work together for
Mm-hmm.
our bodies and for our physical and our mental health. Hey, Sharita, thank you for chiming in. So please make sure you're doing those things to take care of yourself. Here's another thing. You don't have to talk about it all the time. You get to choose. You don't have to talk about it all the time. We experienced a death not long ago, and I overheard it, and I was talking to a young man, and he said, "Yeah, so I kind of stopped answering the phone, and I know people want to know and they want to give their condolences, but I found myself talking about it, and I don't want to talk about it all the time." You don't have to talk about it all the time if you don't want to, because how you grieve is how you grieve. So you don't have to feel obligated to talk about it all the time. It might not be my loved one, but maybe I'm close to you, and so is your loved one. And so, of course, I want to talk about it, like, what happened and how was she and all these little details. And you might not want to talk about it. You don't have to. Give yourself permission to talk about it when you want to. And I thought that one was really huge.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of permission needed when we're going through grief.
yeah.
This is like the one time all the time that you can give yourself permission to do whatever, because it's all about your equilibrium, if I can use that language. It's all about you being in balance with you. Um,
Yeah.
so whatever puts you out of balance, and so when I was preparing this, what came to me as I was thinking about my own grief is that grief is it in my programming experience. Grief is sad, and it's hard, and it has all of this negative connotation. But then, as I put the Stephanie spin on it, it's it's my way of showing my most love that I have for whomever is not here. But what I noticed about my own journey, and I know that you've noticed it about yours too, is that grief has this amazing way of transforming who we are. We begin to just become these different beings. And when we
Yes.
get in a space of acceptance, where I was before this happened, I'm not that person anymore, because
Right.
life is changing me, because I'm growing, and growing things change. Um, Instead, it says we begin to like take a new shape. And you
Mhm.
have to, even like when you're recovering from just dying to your old self, you just have to, you take a new shape. And it's the same with grief. You begin to, when you release and surrender to what's happening, you begin to take on another shape, another
Yeah.
way of loving people. You get to, I've gotten to learn that I can love you and there ain't nothing you can do about it. I don't have to stop
Right.
loving you because you're not here. I don't have to
Mhm.
stop loving you because we're not in relationship. I don't have to stop any of that. Does not have to be
Mhm.
my reality. If love is my high vibe, I can stay in that without conditions.
Right.
Um, and that's
Mhm.
one of the beautiful things that that I
And
recognize that grief has done.
and I wanted to speak on, I know at one point, looking at one of Joy's comments, and she said, yes, especially being the strong one. Let's not get it twisted. You are not weak because you're grieving. Actually, you're strong. You
Hmm.
get to show people by example what grief looks like.
Hmm.
You're taking care of yourself by going through the grief.
Hmm.
Um, Actually, quite the opposite when you're trying to be this strong one, because you're breaking down and you're being torn down on the inside because you're trying to hold up this fake exterior for
Right,
somebody else. You
right,
get to be the one that's not okay.
right. Well,
You get to be the one to say out loud, I'm not okay
I'm not
today.
okay. Hmm.
I'm not okay.
Hmm.
And because maybe some of the people that you've been so strong for, one, you might not be okay today, but they might be okay today.
Yes.
And then
And
you
you
get
give
to
people
lean on them.
permission. Yeah.
Yes.
And you give people permission to feel what
Yes.
they feel.
Mhm.
I work with families all the time. So I'm always working with systems. And so if I have a strong, African American woman, and I'm just going to use that because that's what we do, a strong African American mom come in riddled with grief and trauma, but she
Mhm.
hasn't cried. Her kids ain't never seen her cry. And the kids are sitting there and they, and then she breaking and they like, Mama, I never see you cry. And then all of a sudden they crying. And then the whole session is just
Mhm.
crying because they needed to see their mother have her
Be real.
moment.
Yes. Be human.
So it's important to let people understand that I'm human. I have emotions. This is impacting me.
Yes.
And that, it is true. I've seen it with my own eyes time and time again. So I agree that the strength is being able to say, ouch, cuss, 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 out.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
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 Hmm.
Yes. And sometimes what I find is um doing something nice for other people. That does not mean ignore what you feel. That doesn't mean being where you are, and not being there and ignoring that. But sometimes, sometimes the grief is a fleeting thought, right? And we don't have to make it, and I'll use me as example, have a fleeting thought. And it's not necessarily that I'm ignoring the fleeting thought, but I'm going on with my day. Okay, I acknowledge that thought. Ooh, I felt that in my gut. And then I'm gonna go on and do what I'm gonna do for other people. I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna focus on the gratitude that I have for that person being in my life. Wanda said, "My grief is raw. I threw the strong woman out a while ago. Good for you.
Hmm.
Good for
Hmm.
you. Because we gotta, as Stephanie said, there's growth in that process too.
Hmm.
And when you don't allow yourself to go through the process, you stifle your growth
And transformation.
and transformation. Absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. Steph, if you have anything else for us, this was really good.
I don't.
I needed to
We
take a.
made it. We made it.
I know. I needed to take a breath. Everybody on here, go ahead and take a deep breath right now. For those of you that are grieving at this moment, you go ahead and take your breath right now.
Mhm.
Be good to yourself. You deserve that. If you need to get into therapy, do that, whatever it takes. Breathing, Denise, thank you for breathing. Barbara said, thank you, ladies. You are welcome.
Welcome.
Joy said, awesome conversation. Thank you, Joy. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please
Thank
share this.
you.
Please tag people. I'm going to try to get the link out sooner in the event, create this event sooner. Y'all hold me to that. That's my New Year's thing, that I'm gonna start getting stuff out sooner rather than later. So anybody who I invite, you can invite other people, and
Right.
we can have a bigger crowd of people getting this information. But however, if people are not on, go ahead and share this live. We are Facebook and YouTube live. So go ahead and share this with other people so they can have this information. They can always go back and watch it later. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask those questions of us. I
Mm.
think that's all I have. This was phenomenal.
Yes. Yes.
This is phenomenal. Even with our little hiccups, like I
Yes.
said, the screen can be black. If you can hear my voice and you give me a thumbs up that you hear us talking, we're going to keep talking. Because we're going to get that information out there.
Right.
Judy said, thank you, ladies. Great
Thanks
job,
for
ladies. Thanks.
watching,
Love you
Judy.
both. Thank you, Judy. I am Michelle Bird. I'm your mental health therapist. This is Heads Up Mental Clarity. You can find me on Facebook at Heads Up Mental Clarity Group. Also, my private page, Michelle Wallace Bird. Psychology Today under Michelle Bird. You can find me on my website at chicagocompasscounseling.com. You can find me on Instagram, Mrs. Bird LPC. I think I covered every place you can find me. But you can find me at either of those places, or you can reach me by email. And that's michelledbird@gmail.com. Go ahead, Steph.
You can reach me at Lamplight Counseling Psychology Today and Let's Talk MFT@gmail.com.
Thank you guys for chiming in. We will be back with you in the next 2 weeks with another very interesting conversation. And listen, we don't mind kind of veering off. We want to get into some other real life conversations. So please send me a message in the comments and things like that if you have something you want us to cover that we have not covered. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, friend.
You.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right.
Namaste.
Okay. Namaste. I say.